That doesn't mean that every day you come into work, it's rah-rah, easy, easy, easy. Things just go like cake and sales fall over and all that. What you guys do is tough. The toughest part of what you do, though, isn't the sales process. It's managing your state. And that means that when you come in, you can be focused on all of the things that frustrated you yesterday or all the opportunities you got today. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's paradise and it's easy to do and all of that, because we all know it's not. And it's tough. And it can be a grind. And the attitudes and the energies and things like that can take their toll. Your toughest job is to manage your state. Now, what creates the state you're in?
Our minds. What do you mean? She
What'd
got
she
it.
just do?
Yeah, she got it.
No, because that's an honest question.
I
But you were
understand that.
honest. But yeah.
Here,
What do you mean by
the state of mind
Yeah.
that you're in is governed by the questions you ask yourself. So back to why questions are such a vital aspect of selling.
So what are questions to ask? What are the appropriate questions for me to ask of myself to be able to get me to shift immediately? Because for me, it's all about now. Like, how fast can I shift?
Okay, you guys.
Because I know that I could just drag this on all day and just stay in this funk and keep saying I'm in a funk and try to convince myself I'm out of it. And then the day goes by and I just lost a whole day. Okay? So, what
And how's that feel?
well, it sucks when the day's
Sucks.
over, because then it's like I turn around and I'm going, great, I got some stuff done, but I wasn't as productive as I know I could have if I would have been on.
Okay,
Okay,
now
so
I'm
what
going to
are the
interrupt you
questions?
because I understand what it is that you're asking. And I want you all to be aware of two things.
Yeah.
One is, she provided me with the
Yeah,
answer
yeah.
to her question while she was asking the question.
What do you mean?
You asked me, what can you do that's going to shift that state because you're in a funk,
Uh-huh,
and you're coming in and you know you're in a funk,
uh-huh.
and it's because you asked yourself questions about what was going to happen when you got here.
Mm-hmm.
You forward projected yourself through time and went, okay, here's what I'm going to experience when I get there. So, all you need to do is ask yourself, how can I shift that? And that's a really great, I'm really about personal accountability, you guys. And so the first thing you have to do is get personal with yourself. The fact that she's aware of the fact that she's in a funk and can be honest with herself about it and go, I'm in a funk, I need to shift. Now, the reason I say you gave me the answer is because you told me what it is that you don't want. And that's to get to the end of the day and feel like crap with regret because you let the day get away from you because you were in a funk. So all you need to do is ask yourself, how am I going to feel at the end of the day if I piss this day away by being in a funk and not shifting my energy now? That'll shift because that's your end concern.
Got it.
Okay? You express that through the
That's
course
really
of your
good
question.
listening on your part.
I'm good at
No, seriously.
Well, and he
Right?
said, how does that feel? Because you expressed a whole day, and then he came back with a question,
Yeah, but
which was, how do you feel
yeah,
about that?
because he listened to what was my concern.
Exactly.
Correct.
And then you came back with the
And
answer.
so it's going to be unique now, we understand, to all of you. And there's not one right answer. Because here's the thing. Let me give you this. And my uncle, I remember being 12 years old, hearing my uncle in a sales meeting of hundreds of salespeople going through this whole exercise, and it's always stuck with me. If you ask yourself a crappy question, you're going to get a crappy answer.
I thought there's no such thing as a bad question.
There is when you're asking it of yourself. Good distinction to that. You can ask yourself really bad questions. Now, what's the difference between a bad question and a good question? And I'm not going to say positive or negative because that doesn't work in my world. It's not a model that fits for me to go, I can put questions into one of these two broad categories. There is broad categories I can put them in though. Useful, not useful. Is this question useful to me in a way that's going to support me with achieving what it is that I want to create? You with me?
Yes.
That's my criteria. I don't care how you positive question, negative question, that's a judgment.
Right.
However, if you look at it from an evaluative perspective of a tool that you have to utilize, is this useful to support me in achieving what it is that I want to create today? Now, I say if you ask yourself a bad question, you're going to get a bad answer. That's a question that is not going to provide a useful answer. Here's the thing, you guys. There's this thing, and I know you're familiar with it, Nanette, and it's called the reticular activating system. RAS. It's part of your brain. And it's the thing that fires when all of a sudden you have a car and you start seeing all the other cars that are just like your car. Okay, that's called the reticular activating system. It's an awareness, a presence of mind that has something has triggered for you to now take in more information about something you weren't previously. You with me? And your reticular activating system is responsible for answering questions you ask of yourself. And here's the thing, it does its job really, really well. Now, write this down. How questions underneath that, write why questions. If you're engaged in the process of selling and you find yourself asking why questions, you're going to be in a funk. Why? Finish it with anything you want. Can't I get a hold of anybody today? Why is it not cold enough in this room? Why can't I get leads that I need? Why can't I get these people to buy? Why does the boss do this? Why does it... Now, let me tell you something. I have managed crews numbering in the hundreds, and they come up to you with these why questions all day long. And as a manager, you're losing your mind because you're like, stop! And I've given like extreme meetings that I don't want to hear any why questions anywhere in this office. Because they limit your ability to achieve what it is that you want. How? It's about resources, you guys. You all have the resources to create sales. But if you don't have the access to those resources because you've asked yourself crappy questions that limit your ability to get access to them, you're not going to get what you want. So, why questions really suck. How questions take you in a place that gives you creativity, possibility, and outcomes that you want with a defined path. Now, I'll give you an example of that. I gave you a lot of examples of why questions. How can I turn this around? How can I get these people more interested in what it is that I'm doing quicker? How can I make more calls in an hour than I am now? How can I get my pitch a little more efficiently delivered so that I'm cutting 2 minutes off of it, and those 2 minutes add up to a week and a half, a month, and those... You with me? How can I do something to become more aware of when I'm being asked a question? How? See, and like I said, your reticular activating system does this really good job of answering questions. And if you ask it a why question, it's going to go to work immediately and it's going to give you an answer to your why question. And that will almost always, that answer, be centered upon your limitations or lack as a human being. Your brain does that for you. What a great gift, huh?
And then of course,
Why can't I get these people? Why can't I sell these people at the level that he does? Well, you're just not as good of a salesperson. And this is what your brain does. So you turn that around to how? How can I sell at the same level he is? That's going to give you a completely different answer. And that answer will carry you to a completely different place, which will carry you to a completely different state of mind. Okay, so you're going to shift gears a little bit.
that's great.
Everybody with me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that.
Good. Now, write this down. But, B-U-T. I'm going to this wasn't something that I had planned on covering, but somebody said something earlier that triggered me, so I wanted to cover this. Now cross it out. Should never be a word that's allowed in your vernacular as a salesperson.
And
Correct. Can you give me an example of how one would replace the other?
I wanted to go to the beach, but I couldn't, or I wanted to go to the beach, and instead of that, I was able to do that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Now,
What if you took it to a sales and you said, I would like to sell you 3 of our Hawaii packages, and what I can't do is sell you 10 of this and add the 3 onto that so that you'll be able to meet our minimum.
awesome.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Good job.
Well, it kind of comes down to, Paul, what I've always, when you go back to the how for a second, this is what I've learned, okay? Whatever you focus on, you get more of. So if I'm sitting here and I'm thinking to myself, how can I create a package that will generate X amount of money per month for me, okay? Then the creative process starts and I start listing, okay? And if I don't use the but, I think there's one other word that I've taken out of.
However,
No, it's try.
try.
Because if you sat here and you said to everybody, I want you to try and stand up, we're either going to do it or we're not.
Okay, I need to interrupt you on that. That's really good. Thank you for sharing that. Here's the thing. I will very often do while I'm teaching what I'm teaching, while I'm teaching it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure.
And I just did it right here because I asked a question a minute ago. And the question that I asked was, can you share an example of how that might be the case? And you gave a good response to that, which she built on and elaborated on, adding a little more to it. Neither one of you asked me a question at the end of it. And that, again, is the critical element of all of this. You can have those great replies and those great responses. You don't get that question at the end.
What question,
Yeah,
what question would they have asked after that?
No,
I can do this or
said
this.
that.
I know,
Would
what
you
question
rather-
would
Would
you
I have asked?
I
Yeah.
can do this or this. Which would you prefer? I can get this out to you tomorrow and discount it this much because you're helping me with this. Fair enough?
Fair enough. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Now, let me get through this really quick, and I'll give you a quick example because there's a few more things I want to cover. We'll give you time on time. I'll give you a strategy for the but and approach to things. When you use but, you're always negating what it is that they're saying, and you guys all understand that, correct? Okay, so I'm not going to go into that. Here's the thing. When you do that, it's because they've asked you a question. You're almost always going to use but when you're replying to a question. So if they say, well, what about this? And you say, well, we got this, that, and the other, but what that means, more important than negating the question, is that there's something else I didn't understand. And now I'm finding out. You with me? And I don't want to find things out like that from a company I'm going to do business with. Make sense? And so what you want to do is replace that but with an and. And it's, again, going to typically come when somebody asks you a question that you're going to use a but response. So here's my common response that I build all my other responses out of, but this is the initial framework that I start with. You know what, John? I hear what you're saying, and I completely understand it. Boom, we validated his feelings. And what he said. And I completely understand it. I've already said and once. And if I were in your shoes, I'm sure I'd feel the exact same way. And if you'll bear with me for just a second, I'm sure you'll understand why it is that thousands of resorts over the course of 20 years are utilizing our system. Can we do that? Boom, boom, boom. It's and. Those three and transitions. If I were you, I'm sure I'd feel the same way. And if you'll give me just a second, I'm sure I can make you understand how it is that, and then I ask the question. Now, one of the things you brought up too was isolating that objection. And this is something that shows up time and again. It's, they ask you something. There's an opportunity to sell. Well, I don't know. What if is there breakage on this? Is there a hook on this? Is it whatever? Let me ask you, John, is that the only thing stopping you from moving forward, saying yes and moving on this today? Yep.
Those are usually questions we ask because we're not dealing with selling the resorts.
I'm just
Just as an example.
yeah.
No, I know, but I was
Love
just saying
that.
it'd be nice if we could.
Now, there's something called the fishhook technique, and I started to talk about this a little bit earlier, you guys. This is good for any objection that anybody asks you about anything. And all you're going to do is take exactly what they said and turn it around into a question. The most successful salespeople hear things differently than average salespeople, and they hear them very differently than people who aren't in sales at all. So when somebody says to you, I don't know, this just seems too expensive. What is that?
It's an objection.
It's an objection. It's not saying we're not going to do business together. It's not saying anything other than, please give me more information. I don't know, this just seems too expensive.
Well, what's your budget?
Right, you
How do you
responded
mean?
with a question.
How do you mean?
Now, here's the thing. You guys, my framework for sales is built around agreement. I agree with everything they say, and then create a different framework that suits what I want. Okay? So, they say, it's too expensive. How can I reply to that and close the sale? You know what? You're right, John. It is too expensive. Compared to everything else that's out there, you're going to pay more for this. And here's the interesting thing. Thousands and thousands of organizations are doing it. Would you like to know why? Who's going to say no to that? We're charging more and thousands of people are standing in line to buy it. Would you like to know why?
Yes.
Okay, I've agreed with them.
You know what, that's a great one, because I got that the other day. It's like with our sweet week. That's great, say, but I can get that feed, and so your feed is too expensive. We can get it for, $4 lower.
You're absolutely right, it is. And yet thousands of organizations throughout the world are buying this every day. Would you like to know why?
Would you like to know why NASCAR is doing business with us?
Yeah.
Now,
With that fee?
we can take this to another approach, which is it's too expensive. And this is where I hear things differently than the average person does. John, I think what you're actually asking me is how can we make this affordable for you, fit within the budget, and create a situation where it's not going to be tight on your money. Isn't that correct?
Say that again?
It's too expensive. Same thing.
Uh-huh.
Okay. John, I think what you're actually asking me is how can we make this fit within your budget so that it doesn't cause you any hardship with other areas of your finances? Isn't that correct?
How can we make this fit? That's an important line right
Repeat
there.
that one more
How
time.
can we make this
I like
fit?
that.
How can we make this fit
Within your budget,
within your budget
in a way
in a way
that doesn't create any other strain. You can say it any way you
I don't
want.
like to say a negative.
It doesn't matter how it
create-
is.
But yeah, so it's just fair, it says budget in a way that will make it comfortable for you.
There you go. Isn't that correct? Give me another objection.
Another objection.
Let me interrupt you for a second, because here's the thing. Objections can center around typically three things.
Okay.
Don't like it, can't use it, can't afford it.
Mm.
Summarizes all objections and all sales.
What about
Don't like
the
it.
right time? I hear that all the time.
That's
not-
can't use it.
No, it's not. It's not can't use it. It's not the right time for me
Correct, which means they can't use it now.
now.
Okay? So, fall under that, all
So they all.
will fall under that category of an
Don't
umbrella.
like it, can't use it, can't afford it.
Correct. So, when you get done with the sales presentation, do you think it would behoove you to be able to remove all of the objections before you start to close?
Yeah.
So let me ask you, John, really quick. You've understood obviously what it is that I've shared with you. Do you like what I've explained? Yep. And if you had this program in place today and for the last 6 months, you'd be using it, yes? I would. Let me ask you one more thing, John. If I can make this affordable for you, is there anything else that's going to stop you from moving forward and saying yes to that?
What?
I just removed every objection they can possibly have.
Right. All within. the
And
rules.
they've agreed with me that they have no objection.
That's a sales guy for you.
It's true though, think about it. That's how I got sold my car, that's how I got sold
You bet.
my phone.
Now, let me give you an example since we have a overwhelming majority of females in the room. The place you can see this where they drill it into the salespeople and it's biblical is at the perfume counter. They go through this process. Everything I've explained to you today, Macy's and all the other Nordstrom, they all will go through this process. Would you like to smell? Would you like to sample? Right? A lot of times they just spray it on you. Now they spray it on the car and they hand it to you. Right? Would you like to? Yeah, that's nice. What do they do next? Ask a question. What do they do after that? Ask you another question. What are these questions? Do you like it? Have you smelled anything like that before? Yeah, it's kind of like this or that. Would you like to smell that too? Compare the two maybe? Now what have they got you doing? You got A or B,
And just, yeah, you choose
Right?
one, yeah.
and then it's, which of those two do you most prefer? This one. Terrific. Would you like the
Yeah,
or
1.2.
the 1.7?
That's so true.
Right? And what's the last question they ask?
How would you like to pay for it?
With?
Cash or credit?
Macy's card.
One of two
Macy's
choices.
Right.
So, always questions, always two choices.
Oh, the stuff I want to use it.
Right down the line.
Never said a word, just ask question after
Correct.
question after question.
You know, you guys, I'll share this with you, and we'll wrap it up with it. But there was a TV show, I'm dating myself here, in the 70s called The Mike Douglas Show. It was a talk show. And he had the world's greatest salesman on. And this guy was somebody you've never heard of who wrote a book called The World's Greatest Salesman, Me. His name was Herman, I forget his last name. But that dialogue and that scene always stuck with me. And I was a kid when I watched this, but I was raised around sales. So it was always something that triggered me. And so Mike Douglas, the host of the show, says, so you're the greatest salesman in the world? He said, so sell me something. Herman replies, what would you like to buy? What's that?
Question.
What would you like to buy? I don't know. Picked up an ashtray. This ashtray looks like it's okay. He says, it's a good looking ashtray. Says, let me ask you, if you had that ashtray, would you use it? Mike Douglas says, well, yeah, as a matter of fact, I would. And he says, let me ask you, Mike, what do you figure an ashtray like that is worth? I don't know, 12, 15 bucks? 15 bucks, that sounds reasonable to me. Would you agree that's probably a good value? I would. Terrific, I'll take 15 for it. That's selling. Just asking questions.
And they just,
Just asking questions. So this can actually be fun once you get on the mindset of looking for the opportunities to use these tools. And once you get into that mindset, you start being more productive, and then you start asking yourself more questions. How can I get somebody else to do it? How can I? Now, one of the best ways to adopt these skills, you guys, is by sharing them with someone else. Okay?
teach what you want to learn.
Correct.
What you're saying.
Correct. One of the ways that I have a really amazing ability to remember things that I've heard and categorize them so I can use them later. And I only have that ability, I realize, because when I'm hearing things, I very often think about teaching it later. And by thinking about teaching something later, you actually own the information that you're taking in. And you make it yours. So share some of these things that you've got with your kids, other parents, teachers, faculty members, people that you, because then it's present in your mind too, isn't it? And if it's present in your mind, it's going to, what did we say? What you focus on, you get more of.